Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to our winter Ongo practice period. We're now finishing the third week. Next Saturday will be our closing ceremony. This is a very unique Ongo. Not only are we dealing with the pandemic, we had our Shuso cancel just before the start of Ongo. So that's changed the dimension of our Ongo quite a bit, but I think we're still maintaining the spirit of peaceful dwelling and peaceful abiding. Today, I wanted to go over a little my background, just to give some of you who don't know me that well, a little more understanding. It'll help you understand the talk today. My work, for 30 years, I've been a bilingual elementary school teacher and working primarily with both English-speaking and Spanish-speaking students. And the Spanish-speaking students mostly coming from families of farm workers in Sonoma County. I'm also, right now I'm teaching Spanish part-time at a small elementary school, kind of on the outskirts of Healdsburg, which is north of my hometown, Windsor, California. I also have been practicing martial arts, mainly Aikido, and teaching children martial arts and self-defense for the last 15 years in Healdsburg. As I mentioned, I live in Windsor and live with my wife, Lupita, who is from Nayarit, Mexico. And I also lead the Windsor Sitting Group, a small group in Windsor. Presently, I'm here at a Jesuit retreat center in Tijuana, Mexico. Tijuana, as you know, is on the border. And this retreat center is on a tall, high bluff overlooking the coast on the west side of Tijuana. For quite a long time, I've been traveling in Mexico. I've watched and been interested in the development of Buddhism and Zen in Mexico. When I first started traveling to Mexico 45 years ago, there was hardly any Zen or Buddhism that I could see. About 8 years ago, I went down 8 to 10 years ago to San Miguel de Allende in Mexico City and found quite a bit of Buddhism and Zen. Since that time, I've been coming to Tijuana for the last 5 years. And the reason I'm coming here is because, one, I wanted to bring some Zen and mindfulness to this city, which pretty much, as far as I can see, has very little to none. And there may be a Tibetan Buddhist group here, but this is it's one of the largest cities in Mexico. It has maybe the largest border crossing, the highest amount of traffic anywhere in the world. And so I felt the need to come here, and also just sense the suffering. I wanted to respond to that. And because of the divisiveness of some of our last administration, I felt the need to come here and make a bridge between our cultures. Also, I was motivated by the kind of the urgency of the migrant crisis along the border. When I first came, I wasn't sure what to expect. And I had an image of this town as being very violent. And at one time there were a lot of kidnappings and murders. But interestingly, I found it to be very peaceful, and it's sort of like a facade in the front along the border of all these bars, and sailors and Americans come down to party. At least that was the history of it. Now, because of the pandemic, there are very few Americans or white United States citizens traveling here. It's opening up a little more now because the pandemic is easing, but when I first came 5 years ago, I may have seen one or two white US citizens here in Tijuana. So right now I'm in somewhat of a heavenly realm. This place is very peaceful and sets up high above the surrounding areas of Western Tijuana. And since I've been here, I've really tasted the city, the dust of the city, the dirt of the city. But up here, it's like being up above it in this very peaceful place. I've been able to visit a number of the migrant shelters here in Tijuana. I first came, I was given a tour by Hugo Chavez, who was working for the Border Angels in San Diego. It's an organization that manages shelters and helps with migrants in San Diego. And it was pretty astounding to see Tijuana has many large hills, and way back in the canyons, we went back and visited there were two shelters in the Canyon of Scorpions. It's called the Cañón de Escorpiones. And one shelter was for Central Americans. And then right across the street, shelter for all Haitians. And of course, all these people have been making a long journey. And many of them who have come from South America, even more so because they're going through Panama, and that area is very treacherous. So I'd hoped to do some mindfulness work, but it hadn't really turned out. So it's been more just dialoguing with the migrants in the shelters. I've also been doing work here in Tijuana at an orphanage. It's a very large orphanage, and Kathy Mio and Dennison had told me about it after I think my second trip down. She said, "Oh, you should visit the orphanage." She had been there and volunteered in the mid-70s, I think it was. And so I visited, and I think it was the time Jeff Sokai and I think it was my first visit. He accompanied me, and he also, we visited many shelters, but that was our first visit to the orphanage. And it's quite a unique orphanage. It was built by a wealthy, comes from a wealthy family. He's from San Diego, and his aunt left him with some money, and he built a 5-story wing to this orphanage. And what they do, one of the floors is open for people to come down and volunteer. So church groups come and they build shelters, they rebuild houses. So they've refurbished, renovated many houses in the neighborhood where the orphanage is located. So while I'm at the orphanage, I teach classes. I've set up a daily program where I teach with 2 groups of children, usually the younger kids in the morning and then the older kids in the afternoon. And we start on the first floor in the kindergarten room, which is sort of a nursery, and we do mindfulness and movement. And I've been kind of inspired because the children have really taken to meditation and mindfulness. It's fun to see the kids sitting in the lotus position with a cosmic mudra. And we've even done some walking meditation, which has been a challenge, but they've taken to it pretty well. We've done, and then after that, we usually go do some English, and this time I'll be doing some art with them. And then we finish up with a period of martial arts on the 5th floor. Actually, it's the 6th floor because it's above the floor where I usually stay, which is a small chapel, actually a fairly large chapel on the top of this. It's almost like the roof, which has this panoramic view of the valley. And it's we've got the big crucifix with La Virgen de Guadalupe and Jesus, but we're in there doing martial arts, and it's pretty cool. So this retreat center, it's actually fairly plain, but the views from the windows are quite spectacular. And right now, as I'm looking out, I can see some islands off the coast. But if I look north, I can see where I first arrived. When I first arrived in an area called Playas, Tijuana. And Playas, sort of like, I wouldn't call it a resort, but it's where the Mexicans go to enjoy themselves on the weekend, usually. Playas means beaches, so this is the beach area. But it is somewhat funky. And it's actually, there's a large lighthouse, and then the border wall actually extends from there. So the playas, the beaches come right up to the border wall, which is actually a fence at that point, and it goes into the ocean. And there's even a shelter which we visited right in this, it's an area called Friendship Park. So it's dedicated to all the people who, some who have been lost, and it's an area where people can sometimes meet their relatives through the fence. And some of the migrants have tried to swim to the US, going around the fence in the water, and there's been quite a few drownings, people trying to do that. But I'm hoping, I've visited the shelter there several times, and at some point hope to do some mindfulness with the migrants in that shelter. But one thing here, being in this location and looking out at the ocean, I'm thinking of a couple things. One was some recent pictures of dolphins off our coast in Bodega Bay. I'd never seen dolphins, and I was really amazed. And these were dolphins swimming in the waves of the tsunami. And I looked into it and actually started doing a unit with several of my classes at school in Spanish on dolphins. And I contacted the photographer, and it turns out, because I wondered where the dolphins had come from, he said that from his understanding, the water's warming and the dolphins have been moving north. But it was so unusual that they'd be swimming in the waves of the tsunami. And while I'm here, I was thinking of the whales that are migrating. The gray whales make their pilgrimage, so to speak. They come from the Arctic, and at this time of year, they come along down the shallow waters of the coast, and they're in the lagoons a little further south along the coast here. And they're bearing their young now. And the dolphins, there's dolphins with them, that one big family. But I was so surprised, I've been at home thinking about getting out to the coast, and I haven't been to the coast in quite a while. And to see the dolphins and now to think about the whales, it's very beautiful. And nature has so much. On the surface, we don't always appreciate it, but the depth of it is truly amazing. I wanted to read this piece by Thich Nhat Hanh, and this was, let's see if I can bring it up. This is his statement on climate change for the United Nations. And he wrote this maybe he gave the address in 2014. And I'm going to read some sections. It's longer than what I'm reading, but I'd like to take a few parts from this. This beautiful, bounteous, life-giving planet we call Earth has given birth to each one of us. And each one of us carries the earth within every cell of our body. The earth is our mother, nourishing and protecting us in every moment, giving us air to breathe, fresh water to drink, food to eat, and healing herbs to cure us when we're sick. Every breath we inhale contains our planet's nitrogen, oxygen, vapor, and trace elements. When we breathe with mindfulness, we can experience our interbeing with Earth's delicate atmosphere, with all the plants and even the sun, whose light makes possible the miracle of photosynthesis. With every breath we experience communion. With every breath we can savor the wonders of life. We need to change our way of thinking and seeing things. We need to realize that the earth is not just our environment. The earth is not something outside of us. Breathing with mindfulness and contemplating your body, you realize that you are the earth. You realize that your consciousness is also the consciousness of the earth. Look around you. What you see is not your environment, it is you. Whatever nationality or culture we belong to, whatever religion we follow, whether we're Buddhists, Christians, Muslims, Jews, or atheists, we can all see that the earth is not inert matter. She's a great being who has herself given birth to many great beings, including Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, prophets and saints, sons and daughters of God and humankind. The earth is a loving mother, nurturing and protecting all peoples and all species without discrimination. When you realize the earth is so much more than simply your environment, you'll be moved to protect her in the same way as you would yourself. This is the kind of awareness, the kind of awakening that we truly need. And the future of the planet depends on whether we're able to cultivate this insight or not. The earth and all species on earth are in real danger. Yet if we can develop a deep relationship with the earth, we'll have enough love, strength, and awakening in order to change our way of life. We can all experience a feeling of deep admiration and love when we see the great harmony, elegance, and beauty of the earth. A simple branch of cherry blossom, the shell of a snail, or the wing of a bat, they all bear witness to Earth's masterful creativity. Every advance in our scientific understanding deepens our admiration and love for this wondrous planet. When we can truly see and understand the earth, love is born in our hearts. we feel connected. That is the meaning of love, to be at one. There's a revolution that needs to happen, and it starts from inside each one of us. We need to wake up and fall in love with the earth. Our love and admiration for the earth has the power to unite us and remove all boundaries, separation, and discrimination. Centuries of individualism and competition have brought about tremendous destruction and alienation. We need to reestablish true communication, true communion with ourselves, with the earth, and with one another as children of the same mother. We need more than new technology to protect our planet. We need real community and cooperation. All civilizations are impermanent and must come to an end one day. But if we continue our current course, there's no doubt that our civilization will be destroyed sooner than we think. The earth may need millions of years to heal, to retrieve her balance and restore her beauty. She'll be able to recover, but we humans and many other species will disappear until the earth can generate conditions to bring us forth again in new forms. Once we can accept the impermanence of our civilization with peace, we will be liberated from our fear. Only then will we have the strength, awakening, and love we need to bring us together. Cherishing our precious earth, falling in love with the earth is not an obligation. It's a matter of personal and collective happiness and survival. So I was really struck by this line. Actually, a couple of these lines. She will be able to recover, but we humans and many other species will disappear until the earth can generate conditions to bring us forth again in new forms. Once we can accept the impermanence of our civilization with peace, we will be liberated from our fear. So I was thinking, speaking of impermanence, that's one of the themes of our Ango, and also uncertainty. Not knowing. And I felt a lot of that coming here and being here. I was thinking that we often consider impermanence as dissolution, as decay, this march toward death, but also it's birth and the newness of every moment. It's the whales and dolphins giving birth, the flowers that are coming, even the flowers now, leaves from the oak trees. And also on the whales, they travel very freely without passports, no security checks at customs. So I'd like to just finish up with a reading from Dogen. And he talks also about the themes we've been mentioning, and our readings have touched on this Ango. This is from one of his short talks, and a student asks him, and I'll read the opening of this. One day a student asked, although I've been studying the way for years, I haven't been enlightened. The teachers of old had said, don't depend on intelligence and learning. The teachers of old had said this, so I believe that even if I'm slow and have little wisdom, I shouldn't become discouraged. Is there anything to learn from the teachers of old about this? Dogen instructed, you're right. Inherent intelligence or high capacity isn't necessary. You should not depend on brilliance or smartness. Don't exclude those who are very slow or less talented. It is a mistake. However, to say that for the true study, you should be like a blind, deaf, or dumb person, the true study of the way should be easy. But even among hundreds and thousands of students in the assembly of one teacher in Great Sung China, those who genuinely attain the way and inherit the Dharma, are only one or two. Therefore, we should keep the examples of the ancient masters in mind. I see that there are those who have the utmost aspiration and those who don't. Those who have the utmost aspiration and study accordingly will not fail to attain the way. You should remember that how much you study and how fast you progress are secondary matters. The joyfully seeking mind is primary. If you seek the way with a genuine intention, if you arouse a determined mind, as you practice just sitting, you are sure to hit the mark. Upon arousing this mind, you should reflect on impermanence of the world. Impermanence is not something you merely visualize or something you create and think about. Impermanence is the truth right in front of you. You need not study other people's words or textual evidence on this matter. To be born in the morning and to die in the evening, not to see someone today whom you saw yesterday. The impermanence of life is in your eyes and your ears. You should not see or hear it only in terms of others, but apply it to your own self. How can you be lax in your practice of the way? Yet this is not urgent enough. You should examine both the mundane world and the Buddha realm. Tomorrow, even in the next moment, you may become gravely ill, lose your senses, and suffer from great pain. You might be suddenly killed by a demon, a robber, or an enemy. Truly, nothing is for certain. Therefore, in this transient world, where the time of death is unpredictable, scheming to live forever or wasting your time plotting against others is quite stupid. The Buddha spoke this truth to sentient beings. Ancestors expounded solely on this matter. I also speak of impermanence, the swift passage of time, and the urgency of birth and death. Do not ever forget this truth. Realize that you have just today, just this moment. You should concentrate your mind on the study of the way without wasting your time. If you do this, your practice becomes easy. To discuss the superiority or inferiority of your nature, the brilliance and slowness of learning is not necessary. So this morning, I was a little surprised. We have a communal dining hall here. And there are a variety of people who come in. Yesterday, there were three Catholic priests sitting very quietly. And I wasn't sure where they were from. Turns out they were from Mexico, but they were all speaking so quietly, I couldn't hear what language they were speaking. And this retreat center is adjacent to Ibero College, which is a Jesuit university. Surprisingly beautiful for this area. And this morning, well, there have been some workers, times they come from Mexico City, younger students, and they work at the college and they stay at this retreat center, and they're kind of loud and boisterous. But this morning I went in because a large group had arrived last night, younger, it seemed like students, maybe college students. And they were kind of loud last night. But this morning I went in to eat and there were like 16 to 20 young men mostly, and mostly dressed in black. It was like being in the Zendo or something. And they were totally eating in silence. And it was very wonderful because I was able to just sit down and eat in silence with them. And I was thinking that the uniqueness of this Ango, we've kind of jettisoned some of our practices due to our Zooming and online practice. Two things in particular are walking meditation, which Thich Nhat Hanh often promoted. His monks would walk. If you go to some of their monasteries, they have an outdoor walking practice for up to an hour a day. And I've appreciated just doing, our sitting group does kinhin between our sittings. And it's very wonderful just to slow down, just to take those steps. Many groups do different kinds of kinhin. Rinzai, it's very fast sometimes. Some of Deshimaru's students go very slow, but ours is just coordinated with the breath, a half step. And I've just really appreciated that. And I hope that you can try it at home. If you're at home, find a space. It doesn't need to be a big space. But even doing it, you connect with the practice, and it's as if you're back in the Zendo. Dogen's teacher, when he first met Rujing said, I've brought this, no one does this practice. I do the practice, walking meditation. And he describes it just as we do it, half step, The other practice is oryoki. And being away from oryoki, actually, it's like, I don't know, what's that thing, the parking lot thing? When it's gone, you miss it more. You appreciate it more, right? It's a very beautiful practice. And I don't know that we can do it at home, but I think we can eat silently during this Ango period and appreciate those practices that we do. So I'd like to thank you very much and wish you all a very strong practice for the final week. Thank you very much.